The crystal ball sat between us like a joke I wasn't in on anymore. 3 months ago, I would have laughed at anyone sitting where I was now, across from a woman claiming she could read the future in a dingy shop that smelled like incense and disappointment. But 3 months ago, I hadn't lost everything that mattered to me. 3 months ago, I still believed love was real, and that people meant what they said when they promised forever. "Your heart," the psychic whispered, her weathered hands hovering over the clouded glass sphere. "It bleeds for someone who never deserved a single drop." I almost stood up to leave right then. Another generic reading, another waste of the $40 I couldn't afford to spend. But then her eyes, pale blue and suddenly sharp as broken glass, locked onto mine. "He kept something from you, something in a place you've never looked, behind what reflects." My breath caught. The room suddenly felt too small, the incense too thick, because there was no way, absolutely no way, this stranger could know about the mirror in Ryan's apartment. The antique one his grandmother had left him, the one he'd always been weirdly protective about. If you're watching this and you've ever had your world shattered by someone you trusted completely, you'll understand why I had to know more. Sometimes the universe sends us messages through the most unexpected messengers. Like this video, if it found you when you needed it most, that's not coincidence. That's fate. And maybe, just maybe, my story will help you find the truth you're searching for too. My name is Sophia, though for the longest time, I forgot what it meant to truly be myself. 23 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in journalism that I thought would help me uncover important truths. I never imagined the most important truth I'd ever uncover would be about my own life. The psychic's name was Madame Zelda, which should have been my first red flag. Everything about her screamed tourist trap fortune teller, from the neon sign outside her shop on the boardwalk to the beaded curtains and the way she'd beckoned me inside when she saw me crying on the bench outside. I'd been walking for hours after leaving Ryan's apartment for what I thought was the last time, my feet carrying me to the ocean because somehow the vastness of it made my pain feel smaller. "I don't usually do this," she had said, approaching me with a tissue and a gentle smile. "But the spirits, they're very loud about you. They say you need to know something." I'd laughed bitterly through my tears. "Unless they can tell me why my boyfriend of 4 years suddenly decided he didn't love me anymore, I'm not interested." "Free reading," she'd offered. "No charge, just let me try to help." That's how I'd ended up here, listening to her tell me things that were probably true of every broken-hearted girl who'd ever stumbled into her parlor, until she mentioned the mirror. "This man," Madame Zelda continued, her voice taking on an urgent quality I hadn't heard before. "Ryan, yes. He ended things not because he stopped loving you, but because someone made him believe he had to." "That's ridiculous," I said, but my voice shook. "No one made him do anything. He said he'd fallen out of love, that these things happen, that we'd grown apart." She shook her head slowly, her many rings catching the candlelight. "Behind the mirror in his grandmother's room, look there, but be careful. Some secrets are guarded by those who profit from them. His grandmother has been dead for 2 years. Her room, in his apartment, the one he keeps locked." Another chill ran through me. Ryan did have a locked room in his apartment, his grandmother's old bedroom that he'd turned into storage after she passed. He'd always been weird about it, saying it was just full of her old things he couldn't bear to sort through yet. I'd respected his grief, never pushed to see inside. "How do you know about that room?" I whispered. Madame Zelda's expression shifted, and for a moment she looked almost surprised herself. I don't know. The words just come, but they're true, aren't they? There's a mirror in there, an old one with a silver frame decorated with roses." My hands were trembling now. She'd just described Ryan's grandmother's mirror perfectly, the one I'd seen only once when he'd quickly closed the door after retrieving something from the room. "What's behind it?" I asked, my journalist instincts overriding my skepticism. "The truth about why he left you, and the truth about who wanted him to." She pulled back from the crystal ball, looking drained. "That's all I can see. But child, please be careful. Sometimes when we go looking for answers, we find more questions. And sometimes those questions have dangerous answers. I left her shop with my mind spinning. It was probably nothing, just an elaborate cold reading where she'd made some lucky guesses. But the mirror, how could she have known about the mirror? For 3 days, I tried to forget about it. I threw myself into job applications, spent time with my best friend Emma, and tried to pretend that my heart wasn't shattered into a million pieces. But every night, I'd lie awake thinking about that locked room and what might be hidden behind a mirror I'd seen only once. Ryan and I had been together since sophomore year of college. We'd met in a literature class, bonding over our mutual hatred of pretentious poetry and our love of mystery novels. He was everything I'd ever wanted, kind, funny, ambitious, and he looked at me like I was his whole world. We'd moved in together after graduation, or rather, I'd moved into his apartment that he'd inherited from his grandmother. It was a beautiful place, too nice for 2 recent graduates to afford on their own. 3 bedrooms, exposed brick walls, located in the trendy part of downtown. His grandmother had lived there for 40 years before passing away suddenly from a heart attack. Ryan had been devastated. She'd raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 10. The locked room had always been off limits. "It's just too painful," he'd say whenever I asked about it. "All her things are still in there exactly as she left them. I'll deal with it eventually, but not yet." I'd understood. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, and everyone processes it differently. So I'd never pushed, never questioned why he kept it locked even when he wasn't home. Our relationship had been perfect, or so I'd thought. We'd talked about marriage, about kids, about the future we'd build together. He'd been saving up for a ring, he'd told me. We'd even looked at houses online, dreaming about the day we could afford to buy instead of rent. Then, 3 weeks ago, everything changed. It started small. Ryan became distant, distracted. He'd stare at his phone with a furrowed brow, then quickly put it away when I entered the room. He started working late, missing our dinner dates, forgetting to kiss me goodbye in the morning. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd force a smile and say he was just stressed about work. I believed him. His job at the investment firm had been demanding lately, with talks of layoffs and restructuring. I tried to be supportive, giving him space when he needed it, cooking his favorite meals, not complaining when he fell asleep on the couch instead of coming to bed. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Thursday. I'd made lasagna, his grandmother's recipe that he'd taught me. I'd lit candles, put on the jazz playlist he loved, wore the dress he'd bought me for my birthday. I thought maybe a romantic evening would help him relax, help us reconnect. He came home 2 hours late, and I could tell immediately that something was wrong. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he set down his briefcase. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words sent ice through my veins. "What's wrong?" I asked, reaching for him, but he stepped back. "I can't do this anymore, Sophia. Us. I can't do us anymore." The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds. Incomprehensible noise that couldn't possibly mean what I thought they meant. "What are you talking about? Ryan, what's going on?" He wouldn't look at me. This man who'd held my gaze while promising me forever couldn't even look me in the eye as he destroyed my world. "I've fallen out of love with you," he said to the floor. "It happens. People grow apart. I'm sorry." "That's bullshit," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "People don't just fall out of love overnight. Last month you were talking about marriage. Last week you told me I was the best thing that ever happened. To you." I was confused. I thought that's what I wanted, but it's not. "Is there someone else?" "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. "There's no one else. I need you to leave. Tonight." "Tonight? Ryan, this is my home too. You can't just—" "Please," he said, and for the first time he looked at me. His eyes were red, tortured, but there was something else there too. Fear. Please, Sophia, just pack your things and go. I'll send you money for a hotel, for an apartment, whatever you need, but you have to leave tonight." I stared at him, this stranger wearing the face of the man I loved. "Why tonight? What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. I can't have you here anymore. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I wanted to fight, to demand answers, to make him tell me the truth. But the look in his eyes, desperate, almost panicked, made me stop. This wasn't just about falling out of love. Something else was happening, something he wasn't telling me. So I packed. I threw clothes into suitcases, grabbed my laptop, my jewelry box, the photos of us I couldn't bear to leave behind. He stood in the doorway of our bedroom, his bedroom now, watching me with that same tortured expression. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "Tell me the truth," I begged as I zipped up my last bag. "Whatever it is, we can work through it. Please, Ryan, don't do this." He closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought he might break, might tell me what was really going on. But then he shook his head. "There's nothing to tell. I just don't love you anymore." I left that night with nowhere to go and a heart so broken I could barely breathe. Emma took me in, held me while I sobbed, promised me it would get better, even though we both knew she was lying. For 3 weeks, I'd been living in her spare room, trying to make sense of what had happened. Ryan had blocked my number, my social media, cut me out of his life so completely, it was like I'd never existed at all. Our mutual friends were as confused as I was. He'd told them the same story about falling out of love, but none of them believed it either. He looked miserable at work yesterday, our friend Jake had told me, like he hadn't slept in days. "This doesn't make any sense, Soph. The guy was crazy about you." But if he was so miserable, why wouldn't he talk to me? Why wouldn't he tell me what was really going on? That's what had led me to the boardwalk that day, walking aimlessly while trying to find answers in the rhythm of the waves. And that's what had led me to Madame Zelda and her impossible knowledge about a mirror in a locked room. On the 4th day after the reading, I couldn't take it anymore. I still had my key to Ryan's apartment. He'd never asked for it back in his rush to get me out. He'd be at work until at least 7, giving me plenty of time to get in, find the mirror, and get out. I told myself I was crazy as I took the subway to his building, told myself I was violating his privacy, his trust, that I should just let it go and move on. But Madame Zelda's words kept echoing in my head. Someone made him believe he had to. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it, except for the absence of all my things. It was like I'd been erased, with no trace that I'd ever lived there at all. Even the photos of us that had lined the mantel were gone, leaving dust-free rectangles on the wood like ghosts of happier times. The locked room was at the end of the hallway. I stood in front of it for a long moment, my hand on the doorknob, my heart pounding. The lock was a simple one, the kind you could open with a bobby pin if you knew how. And thanks to a childhood spent reading Nancy Drew mysteries and practicing on my diary lock, I did know how. It took me less than a minute to get the door open. The room was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of being full of dusty furniture and boxes of memories, it was neat, organized, and clearly in use. A desk sat against one wall with an expensive laptop and multiple monitors. Filing cabinets lined another wall, each one labeled with dates going back years. And there, on the far wall, was the mirror. It was exactly as Madame Zelda had described. Silver frame decorated with intricate roses, obviously antique, probably worth a fortune. But it was what was around the mirror that made my blood run cold. Photos, dozens of them pinned to the wall in a careful pattern. Photos of Ryan, photos of me, photos of us together, but also photos of Ryan with another woman, an older woman I recognized but couldn't quite place. They were dated, organized chronologically, going back to before Ryan's grandmother had died. I moved closer, my hands shaking as I examined the photos. The woman looked familiar, but it wasn't until I saw a photo of her at what looked like a company party that I realized who she was. Victoria Ashford, Ryan's boss at the investment firm, the one who'd taken him under her wing, mentored him, fast-tracked his career. But these weren't professional photos. In some, they were at restaurants, at the theater, at what looked like a hotel bar. They were dated from 2.5 years ago, 6 months before Ryan's grandmother died, when Ryan and I had already been together for over a year. My stomach churned as the implications hit me. Had Ryan been having an affair with his boss this whole time? But no, that didn't make sense. The photos stopped abruptly right around the time his grandmother died, and there were none from the past 2 years. I turned to the filing cabinets, my journalist instincts taking over. The first one I opened was full of financial documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, all in his grandmother's name. But the numbers didn't make sense. His grandmother had been a retired teacher. How did she have millions of dollars in investments? The second cabinet held legal documents, wills, trusts, contracts. I pulled out a folder labeled Estate Planning and started reading. What I found made me sink to the floor, the papers scattering around me. Ryan's grandmother hadn't died of a heart attack. According to the autopsy report I was holding, she died of digitalis poisoning, an overdose of heart medication. The death had been ruled accidental, an elderly woman confused about her medications. But there was more. So much more. A contract dated 3 years ago between Victoria Ashford and Eleanor Morrison, Ryan's grandmother. Victoria had been managing Eleanor's investments, helping her build a fortune that Ryan would inherit when she died. But there was a clause, hidden in the legal jargon but clear enough once you found it. Victoria would receive a 40% commission on all investments, payable upon Eleanor's death. 40% of millions. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. There were emails, printed and filed chronologically. Emails between Victoria and Eleanor that started professionally but grew increasingly tense. Eleanor had discovered something. Irregularities in her accounts, money being moved without her permission. She'd threatened to go to the authorities to expose Victoria's fraud. The last email from Eleanor was dated 2 days before her death. I've contacted my lawyer. I'm removing you as my financial advisor and filing a complaint with the SEC. What you've done is criminal, and I won't let you destroy my grandson's future to line your own pockets. Victoria's response was chilling in its brevity. We need to discuss this in person. I'll come by tomorrow evening. Eleanor Morrison died the next night. I felt sick, my mind racing to put the pieces together. But there was more to find. I turned back to the mirror, remembering Madame Zelda's words, behind what reflects. The mirror was heavy, mounted to the wall with old brackets, but when I pushed on one side, I felt it give slightly. There was something behind it. I managed to swing it open like a door, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a single manila envelope with my name on it. My name, in Ryan's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated the day before he'd broken up with me. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, then you didn't listen to me. You didn't stay away. I knew you wouldn't. You're too smart, too curious, too brave to just accept what I told you. It's one of the million things I love about you. Yes, love, present tense. I have never stopped loving you, not for a single second. Every word I said that night was a lie, and each one tasted like poison in my mouth. But I had to make you leave. I had to make you hate me. It was the only way to keep you safe. Victoria knows that I know. I don't know how she found out. Maybe she's been watching me. Maybe she saw me in grandmother's room going through the files. But she knows, and she made it very clear what would happen if I didn't do exactly as she said. She has connections I never knew about. People who make problems disappear. People who've helped her before. She showed me photos. A business partner who'd tried to expose her and died in a car accident. A client who'd asked too many questions and committed suicide. And then she showed me photos of you. Recent ones. You at the coffee shop you love. You leaving your yoga class. You walking to work. Such a pretty girl, she said. It would be such a shame if something happened to her. These city streets can be so dangerous. She gave me a choice that wasn't a choice at all. End things with you, cut you out of my life completely, and she'd leave you alone. Stay with you, and you'd have an accident. Soon. I could have gone to the police, but with what proof? She's too smart to leave evidence of her threats. And even if I could prove what she did to grandmother, she made it clear that you'd be gone before any investigation could stop her. So I chose to break your heart to save your life. I chose to let you hate me so you could keep breathing. But I know you, Sophia. I know you'll find this eventually. You're a journalist. The truth calls to you like a siren song. So I'm leaving you everything I've found, everything I've gathered. It's not enough to convict her yet, but it's a start. In the bottom drawer of the desk, there's a flash drive with copies of everything. There's also a recorder with a conversation I managed to capture between Victoria and someone she was threatening. It's not about grandmother, but it proves her pattern. Please be careful. Please be smart. And please, please forgive me. I love you. I'll love you until my last breath and beyond. Everything I did to protect you. Forever yours, Ryan P.S. Grandmother would have loved you. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me get away with anything. Someone who'd challenge me, push me, make me better. She would have been so proud to call you her granddaughter. I sat on the floor of that room, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Everything made sense now. The fear in Ryan's eyes, the way he'd said please like his life depended on it, the speed with which he'd needed me gone. He'd sacrificed everything to protect me. But Victoria had made a crucial mistake. She'd assumed I'd stay away. She'd assumed Ryan's rejection would be enough to keep me from digging. She'd underestimated the power of a broken heart seeking answers. I found the flash drive exactly where Ryan said it would be, along with the recorder. The conversation on it was damning. Victoria threatening someone named Marcus about keeping quiet regarding fraudulent investments or facing the consequences. The man's terror was audible, and Victoria's cold confidence made my skin crawl. I gathered everything, every document, every photo, every piece of evidence. But I knew Ryan was right. It wasn't enough. Victoria had been doing this for years, and she was too careful to be brought down by what we had. But I had something she didn't expect. I had a journalism degree, connections in media, and a burning desire for justice. I started with my mentor from college, Professor Williams, who'd gone on to become an editor at the city's biggest newspaper. I laid out everything for him, showing him the evidence, explaining the connections. "This is huge, Sophia," he said, his eyes gleaming with the same excitement I'd seen when we'd discussed Watergate in class. "But you're right, it's not enough for law enforcement. However, it might be enough to start an investigation. Let me make some calls." Within a week, Professor Williams had assembled a team. 2 investigative journalists with decades of experience, a forensic accountant who specialized in fraud, and a former FBI agent who'd moved into private investigation. They believed my story, believed the evidence, and more importantly, they had the resources to dig deeper. "We need more victims," the lead journalist Patricia Chen told me. "Victoria's been doing this for years. Eleanor Morrison wasn't the first, and she won't be the last unless we stop her." They put me to work researching, using my skills to track down other elderly clients who died unexpectedly, other family members who might have noticed irregularities. It was grueling work, spending days in libraries and archives, making cold calls to grieving families, following paper trails that seemed to lead nowhere. But slowly, a pattern emerged. Dorothy Hensley, 78, died of an accidental overdose 3 years before Eleanor. She'd been Victoria's client and had just changed her will to leave less to charity and more to investment accounts Victoria managed. George Patterson, 82, fell down his stairs 2 years before that. He'd been asking questions about missing funds weeks before his death. Margaret Chen, no relation to Patricia, had a heart attack at 75, despite having no history of heart problems. She'd threatened to sue Victoria the month before she died. The list grew. 7 suspicious deaths over 8 years, all Victoria's clients, all with millions in managed accounts, all dying just when they'd started asking uncomfortable questions. But we needed someone alive, someone who could testify. That's when I remembered the recording. Marcus, the man Victoria had threatened. If we could find him, convince him to talk, we might have enough. It took 3 weeks to track down Marcus Webb. He'd left the city, moved to a small town 3 states away, changed careers from finance to teaching high school math. When I showed up at his door with Patricia, his face went white. "I can't talk to you," he said, trying to close the door. "Please," I begged. "She killed my boyfriend's grandmother. She's destroyed lives. We can stop her, but we need your help." Something in my face must have convinced him, because he let us in. Over the next 3 hours, Marcus told us everything. How Victoria had recruited him to help with her scheme, how he'd realized what she was doing and tried to get out, how she'd threatened not just him, but his daughter. "I have recordings," he said finally. "I started recording our conversations when I realized what she was, for insurance." The recordings were damning. Victoria discussing how to manipulate elderly clients, how to move money without raising suspicions, and most chillingly, how she'd handled problems before. We had enough. Patricia's newspaper ran the story on a Sunday, giving it the full front-page treatment. Death and dividends, how a financial advisor allegedly murdered for millions. The article laid out everything: the suspicious deaths, the financial fraud, the threats, the pattern of exploitation. By Monday morning, the FBI had opened an investigation. By Tuesday, Victoria was arrested at her office, led out in handcuffs as news cameras rolled. By Wednesday, 3 more victims' families had come forward. But for me, the victory felt hollow. Yes, we'd caught a killer. Yes, justice was being served, but Ryan was still gone, still too afraid to come back to me. I tried calling him after Victoria's arrest, but his number was disconnected. His apartment was empty. He'd moved out the day after I'd found everything. None of our friends knew where he'd gone. It was Emma who suggested going back to Madame Zelda. "She knew about the mirror," Emma said. "Maybe she knows where he is." It was desperate and ridiculous, but I was desperate and ridiculous. So I went back to the boardwalk, back to the little shop with its neon sign and beaded curtains. Madame Zelda smiled when she saw me. "You found the truth." "I did, but I lost him anyway." She studied me for a long moment, then gestured for me to sit. This time, she didn't use the crystal ball. She simply took my hands in hers, closed her eyes, and was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. "He's by water," she said finally. "North, where his grandmother used to take him in summers. A cottage by a lake. He goes there to heal, to hide, to punish himself for hurting you." My heart leapt. I knew exactly where she meant. Ryan had told me about his grandmother's cottage in Maine, how they'd spend weeks there every summer when he was young. He'd always wanted to take me there, but we'd never found the time. "Go to him," Madame Zelda said. "He won't come to you. He believes he doesn't deserve you anymore. Show him he's wrong." I left that day, drove 8 hours north with nothing but hope and a half-remembered description of a cottage by a lake. It took me 2 days of asking in small towns before I found it. A tiny cabin on the shores of Sebago Lake, smoke rising from its chimney. Ryan answered the door, and the look on his face, shock, joy, fear, love, all mixed together, nearly broke me all over again. "Sophia, what are you—" "I know everything," I said. "I found the room, the evidence, your letter. Victoria's been arrested. It's over, Ryan. It's all over." He stared at me, and then his legs seemed to give out. He sank to the porch steps, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding in for months. I sat beside him, pulled him into my arms, and we cried together, for his grandmother, for the months we'd lost, for the pain we'd both endured. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry I hurt you." "You saved my life," I told him. "You gave up everything to protect me." I would do it again, he said fiercely. 1,000 times over. But Sophia, I understand if you can't forgive me. What I said that night, how I hurt you. I silenced him with a kiss, pouring all my love, my forgiveness, my understanding into that moment. When we finally pulled apart, we were both crying again, but they were different tears now. Healing tears. I love you, I said. I never stopped. Even when I thought you'd stopped loving me, I couldn't stop loving you. Marry me, he said suddenly. I know this isn't how I planned it. I don't have a ring. We're sitting on a porch in the middle of nowhere, but I can't wait another day. I've wasted too much time already. Marry me, Sophia. Please. I said yes, of course. How could I not? We'd been through hell and found our way back to each other. We'd faced down a killer and won. We'd learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about protecting each other, fighting for each other, finding each other even when the world tries to tear you apart. We stayed at the cottage for a month, healing, reconnecting, planning a future that had once seemed impossible. Ryan testified at Victoria's trial, his evidence helping to convict her of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The inheritance from Ryan's grandmother, once we'd untangled Victoria's fraud, was more than we'd ever dreamed. But we didn't keep most of it. We used it to set up a foundation in Eleanor Morrison's name, one that helps protect elderly people from financial exploitation. It seemed like what she would have wanted. We got married on the anniversary of the day we'd reunited, a small ceremony by the lake with just our closest friends and family. Madame Zelda was there. I'd insisted, despite Ryan's confusion about why I was inviting a boardwalk psychic to our wedding. She helped me find the truth, I told him, and she helped me find you. During the reception, Madame Zelda pulled me aside. I have a confession, she said. I'm not really psychic. I stared at her, shocked. But you knew about the mirror, the room. She smiled. I knew Eleanor Morrison. We were friends for 40 years. She told me about her concerns about Victoria, about the evidence she'd hidden. When she died, I suspected foul play, but I had no proof, no way to investigate. Then you showed up, crying on that bench, and I recognized you from photos Eleanor had shown me, her grandson's girlfriend, the journalist. I knew if anyone could find the truth and save that boy, it would be you. So you lied to me? I gave you a push in the right direction. Everything else, the courage to seek the truth, the intelligence to piece it together, the love that brought you back to him, that was all you. I hugged her then, this strange woman who'd pretended to be mystical to help solve a murder. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you, she replied. For giving my friend justice, for saving her grandson. She would be so proud of you both. That was 3 years ago. Ryan and I live in a different city now, far from the memories of that terrible time. I work as an investigative journalist, specializing in financial crimes against the elderly. Ryan teaches high school history, having left the finance world behind forever. We have a daughter, Eleanor, named for the grandmother he lost, but whose legacy lives on through the countless elderly people our foundation has protected. Sometimes I think about that day on the boardwalk, how close I came to just walking past that little shop with its neon sign. How different everything would have been if I hadn't sat down across from a fake psychic with a real mission. But I've learned that life is like that, full of moments that seem like coincidence, but might be something more. Maybe it was fate that led me to Madame Zelda. Maybe it was Eleanor Morrison's spirit, making sure her grandson found his way back to happiness. Or maybe it was just a confluence of events that worked out in our favor. What I know for sure is this: love is worth fighting for. Truth is worth seeking. And sometimes, the most unexpected people can change your life forever. Victoria Ashford was convicted on 7 counts of murder, 12 counts of fraud, and numerous other charges. She will never hurt anyone again. The families of her victims found some measure of peace, knowing that justice had finally been served. Marcus Webb testified at her trial, his courage helping to ensure her conviction. He's back in finance now, but working for a nonprofit that helps protect vulnerable populations from scams. Madame Zelda, whose real name is actually Zelda, surprisingly enough, closed her psychic shop and now volunteers at our foundation, using her real skills in accounting to help audit suspicious financial advisors. And Ryan and I? We're proof that love can survive anything if it's real. We're proof that sometimes breaking someone's heart is the ultimate act of love. We're proof that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of finding the light. But most importantly, we're proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe conspires to help two people find their way back to each other. Even if it takes a fake psychic, a hidden room, a mirror full of secrets, and the courage to seek the truth no matter where it leads. Our daughter is 2 now, with her father's eyes and my stubborn streak. Sometimes I tell her stories about her great-grandmother Eleanor, the teacher who became a millionaire, who loved her grandson enough to hide evidence that would one day save him. I tell her about courage and love and the importance of fighting for what's right. And sometimes, when she's older, I'll tell her about the psychic who wasn't psychic, the mirror that held secrets, and how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best thing that ever could. Because that's what I learned from all of this. Pain can be a doorway to truth. Loss can be a path to finding what really matters. And love, real love, can survive anything, even the lie that it's gone. The cottage in Maine is ours now, a wedding gift from Ryan's inheritance. We go there every summer, and I think about that first time I drove up, terrified he wouldn't want me back, terrified I'd lost him forever. Now our daughter plays on the same shores where Ryan played as a child, where his grandmother taught him to skip stones and catch fireflies. There's a photo on the mantel there. Eleanor Morrison, young and vibrant, holding a baby Ryan. Next to it is a photo from our wedding, and next to that, one of our little family. 3 generations connected by love, loss, and the triumph of truth over deception. Sometimes visitors ask about the photos, and we tell them the story. Not all of it. Some pain doesn't need to be shared with strangers. But we tell them about Eleanor, about her strength and her love. We tell them about the foundation, about the work we do. We tell them that every ending can be a beginning if you're brave enough to turn the page. And sometimes, when the sun sets over the lake and the world turns golden, I swear I can feel her there. Eleanor Morrison, watching over the family she died protecting, the love she made possible, the justice she helped us find. Ryan felt it too, the first time we brought our daughter there. He was standing by the window, holding baby Eleanor, when he suddenly smiled, a peaceful, healing smile. "She's here," he said simply. "Grandmother, she's happy." I didn't question it. After everything we'd been through, I'd learned that some things don't need rational explanation. Some things you just know, deep in your bones, the way I knew Ryan still loved me, even when he was telling me he didn't. The way I knew the truth was hidden behind that mirror. The way I knew we'd find our way back to each other. That's the real magic, I think. Not crystal balls or psychic visions, but the magic of human connection, of love that refuses to die, of truth that refuses to stay buried, the magic of second chances and the courage to take them. Every year on the anniversary of Victoria's arrest, we get a card from Madame Zelda. She never signs it with her name, just a simple Z and a quote that's different each time. This year's said, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." We laughed when we read it because it was so perfectly her, wise and irreverent, mystical and practical. She'd played the role of psychic so convincingly that day, speaking in riddles and mysterious pronouncements. But in the end, she was just a woman who'd lost a friend and wanted justice. Just like I was just a woman who'd lost love and wanted answers. The foundation has helped dozens of families now, catching 3 other advisors running similar schemes to Victoria's. Each victory feels like a tribute to Eleanor, like proof that her death meant something, led to something good. Ryan struggles sometimes with survivor's guilt, wondering if he could have saved his grandmother if he'd been paying more attention, if he'd questioned Victoria sooner. But I remind him that Victoria was a master manipulator, that she'd fooled dozens of people over nearly a decade. His grandmother's last act was protecting him, leaving those clues, making sure the truth would come out eventually. She knew you'd figure it out, I tell him, or that you'd find someone who would. And that's what I want to leave you with if you're still listening to my story. The truth is out there, always. It might be hidden behind mirrors or locked in rooms or buried in lies, but it's there. And sometimes finding it takes courage you didn't know you had. Sometimes it takes help from unexpected places. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what you can't afford to lose. But it's always worth seeking, always worth fighting for. Because the truth doesn't just set you free, it gives you the power to free others. It gives you the chance to turn pain into purpose, loss into love, endings into beginnings. My story started with heartbreak and a boardwalk psychic. It led through hidden rooms and family secrets, through murder and fraud, through fear and courage. But it ended with love. It ended with justice. It ended with a family built on truth rather than lies, strength rather than fear. And if a skeptical journalist and a grieving grandson could find their way through all of that, if a fake psychic could help solve a real murder, if love could survive even the most necessary lies, then anything is possible. You just have to be willing to look behind the mirror. You have to be willing to unlock the door. You have to be willing to believe that sometimes the universe sends you exactly where you need to go. Even if it's to a dingy psychic shop on a boardwalk when your heart is breaking and you think your world has ended. Because sometimes that's not where your world ends. Sometimes that's where your real story begins. End. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, and if you believe that everyone deserves to have their true worth seen, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Message. Comment below. And tell me, what was the moment in the story that resonated with you the most? And if you want more powerful stories about finding your strength and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.